This is AUGforums.com Real Talk. First, thank you to our sponsors, APS Payments, Kenzium, and DataSelf. You can learn more about how our sponsors work with Acumatica by going to augforums.com/sponsors. My name is Tim Rodman, and I'm coming to you live on Wednesday, January 13th, 2020. Oh, no, 2021. This is episode number 37. Jody Lorincz, IT Manager at MHR Brands, sharing his Acumatica customer story. Jody, thanks for coming on today, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, thanks, Tim. I'm, like I said, Jody Lorincz. It's actually
Lorincz. Okay,
like
sorry about
spelled, that. Yeah, but that's okay. I was the IT, kind of got thrown into the role. Before I started there, believe it or not, I had never heard the acronym or the ERP. Was not even in my vocabulary. So, and here we are in 2021, 3.5 years later.
So prior to MHR, you were there for a few years, and prior to that, give us a glimpse of your career path. You know, where did things start, and how did you end up landing at MHR and getting involved with Acumatica?
It's a kind of a long beat up story from like where we started until to where I ended up at MHR, because I've known Jeff for a long time. I knew Jeff 20 plus years ago. We started out poor. We were literally dirt floor poor, my family. We didn't have anything. At one point, we lived in a chicken coop that was converted into a house and ended up moving up from there. But, my father left when we were extremely young, when the fifth brother was born. And so we didn't have much of a chance for education. It was not in our future for a formal education. So everything that we wanted, we had to fight tooth and nail for, scratch for, and dig for. And it wasn't much different when we got to Acumatica either, as far as how I got thrown into that. But when I was early 20s, when I was early 20s, I met Jeff Gallagher. Jeff was,
and who is
at that
Jeff?
time.
By the way, who's Jeff now?
Jeff is Jeff. There's a before and after Jeff here. So,
okay, go ahead. Give me the before.
So I mean, I guess just before that, I should say, my oldest brother had reached out to me and said, "Hey, come by my house and check out what I got." Now, keep in mind, he's living in a trailer. We were still poor, even getting into our 20s, because it's not like, money fell at us afterwards. I go to his house and he's got 3 computer systems sitting there. And I'm like, how'd you do this? I thought he robbed somebody. I really did. He's not that kind of guy, but I'm like, how'd you do this? Because I have wanted a computer. The last computer I had before that was a Commodore 128. And store dumpsters. And we found enough parts that night to build 4 complete working systems. I was blown away. And that was my first computer. The first computer I ever built was literally dumpster parts. People threw out their computer because they got a Pentium. Woo! And then after I got started, I was getting more and more into it. And that's right about the time that I met Jeff. And Jeff was running a small company in Flint, Michigan, called Internet Workings, and he hosted websites for people. And I went up there, and it was a non-paid gig, really. I was doing tile work at the time, but at the same time I was kind of working with him and learning about switches and networks and routers and all of this, because Jeff knew it and I was just enthralled with the idea. But then obviously it didn't. But then obviously it didn't pay, So when my daughter was born, I had to focus more and drill down on working more. I worked in the tile union for quite a while. I got really good at it. I became a foreman. Managing people is just natural to me. I get along with people, and I can communicate pretty well with people, and that helped me tremendously. Although computer-wise, I was still working with computers, but it was more at home. I was helping people with their computers, building systems for people, that kind of thing. Worked it up until semi-recently. I guess semi-recently being 10 years ago. I guess that's a cue as to I'm getting old, huh? I ended up running a computer store in. Rockford, Michigan, for a small period of time, and then I had an opportunity to install satellites when the owner died at the computer store. Well, that kind of didn't work out for me very well, so I ended up installing satellites. I did that for a little while, and I learned even more about networking because they came out. I worked for Dish, right? And Dish came out with this Hopper system. Are you familiar with the Hopper?
Heard the name.
Yeah, it's a network-based system, and one unit connects to the dish. The rest is all based with Mocha. Through cable, it connects all the other little Joeys that run throughout the houses. Well, my brother and I figured out real quick that if we plugged a network line into the back of the Joey, and guess what? It worked. We were installing without cables in people's garages and their barns. We were good at this. But it was, again, working outside in the cold in February, and when it's 10 below and your fingers fall off, you don't want to be trying to tighten on and make cables. And so I was seeking warmer work. Got me into the electrical union. And for a while, I worked in the electrical union as a journeyman low-volt electrician. I worked on a project. I can't say because of the NDA, the name of the company, but I can say that I helped install hundreds of miles of fiber in a gigantic data center, and learned a lot about fiber. Something I'd never touched and never had an opportunity to work with before. And I got to develop even more of my management and problem-solving skills working with fiber and trying to figure out how to pull these 200-foot-long bundles of fiber up into a tray 20 feet off the ground, and then I'll pass all these 90-degree turns and without damaging it. Because, it's glass, right? And I did that for quite a while. At one point there, before that, I should say, I tried to venture into owning trucks and driving for a living, and that failed miserably. I bought some trucks. I'm talking, yeah, I'm good. This is great. And then the fuel prices went through the roof that year, and I was signed on with an expediting company, and everybody's like, why would we pay you extra to expedite it when it's way cheaper to go with these guys? So I ended up losing my trucks. But then, like I said, in the electrical union, I was working one day. This is well after the data center. I was working in a company that makes medical supplies, and I think they're pretty much worldwide, the medical supplies that they make. But I was up on a ladder. I come down off the ladder, and it was basically climb the ladder, move a line, climb down the ladder. We were replacing and updating everything, and I came off the ladder, and everybody's done this. I missed that bottom step. And, everybody tries, it was done. I ended up having to check out at that point. I couldn't climb a ladder anymore because I literally, my knee was blown. I actually ended up getting a knee replacement a couple years later because of that. But I was out of work, and then my buddy Jeff calls me and says, hey, I have some work I need to have done, and you're the guy to do it. And so I came up to Michigan, and I wasn't planning on moving. I thought it was just kind of a summer gig, and it turned into much more. So I ended up working at MHR at that point, and that was when the first time I heard ERP, and I had to figure out how to administrate it from the books that they had for it. This was pretty gooey. I mean, before there was really a good interface in Acumatica, and from there it's just been it's been a learning battle, but I love it.
Before we get into the Acumatica side, maybe you tell us, well, first of all, on your background, I love that. Prior company I worked at, one of our best IT guys, I'm glad you brought up the truck side. He was a truck driver before that. And just that hands-on, do-it-yourself, figure things out mentality, I love that. And I've actually heard someone in the ERP industry say that he hasn't met many people in the ERP industry that are kind of like, I don't know if you call them trust fund babies or have things handed, it just continues that way for you. But, now that we're on MHR side, before we go to the Acumatica part, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what is MHR, what do they do, what system were they running prior to Acumatica, and how did you end up selecting Acumatica?
So back in 2013 is when MHR started. And to give you kind of a background there, CBD wasn't a thing in 2013. It wasn't mainstream. Nobody knew anything about CBD. And Jeff was, and I hope I get his story kind of right, because he was very distraught. His wife died, leaving him with a young child to raise on his own while, trying to be a father, trying to work. And he was on anti-anxiety that pointed him to CBD products. And the CBD products that he pointed him to originally were basically made from marijuana. And Jeff, being the responsible person that he is, he's like, whoa, hey, all right, love the effect, don't love the high. And so he wanted to figure out how do we do this without the high. And he found other people were starting to make CBD products with hemp, because hemp is extremely high in CBD and extremely low in THC. So, I mean, you could drink gallons of it and never get high. And he started out making a couple of tinctures and what have you, and using basically QuickBooks, because he was small. He had one little website, wasn't doing much. And, he was happy to make a living with just that. And his philosophy at that time was, you help people, the money. And, he was happy to make a living with just that. And his philosophy at that time was, you help people, the money will come, right? If he sold just enough to help some people and do all right, he was good with that. And he buried himself in credit cards to get it all started, and it turned into something. And he's been a forerunner in CBD ever since. But then he got bigger and ended up buying a new property in Jenison, Michigan, that included a lab space for manufacturing everything, and it gave a dedicated space for warehousing and shipping. And then he had the call center, and he needed something a little bigger than QuickBooks and writing things down on paper, for all of that to work together. And that's where he kind of started looking around and ended up with. So
Cool. So what about COVID has thrown things off the rails for everyone, but let's say like pre-COVID, like just give us an idea of size. What was the expected ballpark annual revenue, number of employees, company size?
So at one time, not too long ago, we were looking at 25 to 30 employees and about 13 million in sales. And I mean, it was very doable between the 10 e-commerce websites that all fed into our Acumatica system. We tried some retail locations, and then we had wholesale, and we were selling wholesale to all over the world, wholesale products. Even COVID did have a huge impact on MHR in that way, because you have retail locations that have to shutter their doors and be locked down. They're not selling anything. They're not selling, they're not buying, and if they're not buying, then the manufacturer isn't selling. And being the manufacturer, that's a big hit. It's not an expensive product to create.
Before COVID, you were looking around 13 million, and that fits with traditionally, I think, what most people see in mid-market ERP. You get around that 10 million a year in revenue, and that's kind of the general breaking point for QuickBooks, and you move on to Acumatica. So then when you personally got involved with it, maybe give us a little bit of the story of how maybe you weren't there yet, but how the implementation went. So then when you personally got involved with it, maybe give us a little bit of the story of how maybe you weren't there yet, but how the implementation went, and maybe some advice that you would give to someone who's implementing Acumatica.
Well, now first of all, when they implemented Acumatica the first time, they weren't doing anywhere near those numbers. I'm not positive on the numbers, but I would be surprised if they were even at the $1 million mark at that point. But there was a shine to it, because Acumatica did so much more and integrated so many different things that QuickBooks only did money. And they were at that point, hand entering all of these websites. That was the crux of everything. Tying the e-commerce in to have it directly feed and automatically generate shipments. That was the whole key, I think, for why they ended up getting Acumatica set up. Now, that was, like I said, that was prior to me coming on. And I think they finally ended up with Acumatica in lieu of a different ERP system, because they knew somebody in Acumatica, and it came very highly recommended at that time. So now, from what I understand, from when I came on, Acumatica at that point wasn't installed entirely properly. And the way the story goes for me was, the way the story went to me was basically that the company said, hey, this is our second install, so let's get through this together. And they hashed it, and they did it. But there were a few things that they may have missed the mark on. Maybe they didn't know, whatever. And at one point, just as an example, when we ended up migrating from our first VAR to the second VAR, the database alone was 85 gigs. So wrap your head around that. There's nowhere near that much in documents, and just everything was just kind of, it was bad. Everything was corrupt.
Sounds like a lot of deleted records and things of that nature, a lot of audit history and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Deleted records and things of that nature. A lot of made audit history and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Um, and they ended up having to, because CBD is in that cannabis space, they needed to get we needed to get a seed to sale kind of implementation. CBD, it was very hard to get the hemp products into the U.S. at that point, because again, they still really frowned on it. They still considered it cannabis. And we could get certain products in. Jeff was looking at kind of maybe getting a farm started up in Colorado or something where it would be easy to implement it, but we still had to have that seed to sale kind of implementation that nobody else seemed to have. But we still had to have that seed to sale kind of implementation that nobody else seemed to have. So we ended up switching VARs to a VAR that had a custom kind of seed to sale customization, which in the long run we never actually ended up implementing, because they passed the farm bill that allowed hemp to be grown everywhere. Now CBD is everywhere.
But so you changed VARs in the middle there, and it sounds like that was needed even to get live. You weren't even live before switching VARs.
Oh no. It was live. It was live for a few years before we switched VARs.
Okay.
But like I said, by the time I came in, it was just into that. I think I was there 6 months before we ended up switching over to the new Acumatica, and we did that when we switched VARs. So it was 2017, I want to say, end of 2017, maybe 2018. I didn't write it down,
you went
so
live,
I can't tell you for sure.
No problem. When you went live, so a few years ago.
With the now again, they went live with Acumatica before I even got there.
Oh, okay. So like how long ago? Like what year was that?
I don't think I'd be pushing it. Say 2015.
Okay,
it
was a while ago.
I ever asked him that. It was a while ago. Like I said, again, Acumatica at that point, everybody's like, Acu what?
Right. And that's why you mentioned the GUI. There wasn't much of a.
Okay, and they're like, all right, you're going to be, adding new users, creating creating generic inquiries. You're going to be doing import scenarios, and I'm like, what's ERP? So yeah, it was quite the crash course. But again, because of how I was raised, and because we had to fight for everything, we had to learn everything on our own. It wasn't that bad to actually kind of go in and break the sandbox about 30 times. So I figured it out.
Actually, I was just going to say that. That sounds like a perfect situation for you to plug into. So that kind of worked out well.
Yeah, I would say it worked out well. Then we switched to this new VAR. Things kind of went haywire. They attempted. Things kind of went haywire. They attempted to clean up the data that was there from the old, 6.0 to the new Acumatica. The problem came in. They created these import scenarios, for instance, just as an example, and these import scenarios, to bring all the data over and try to do it as cleanly as possible. But when they did, now they ended up setting us up 2 instances instead of 1, because we had to have a separate instance for the manufacturing side, because it was technically I don't understand this entirely. So if I am wrong, in my head, it says these should be branches, but they're set up as separate companies entirely, so that they could sell the bulk products or the wholesale products into MHR's inventory. But I think there's got to be an inter-branch way to do that that doesn't involve a separate instance. I'm pretty sure. Just saying.
Do you know do you know if they were separate legal entities? Was that the trigger?
Well, they're separate legal entities, but they're all owned by the same parent corporation.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
gotcha.
And again,
well, I'm curious.
I'm not the
I'm also
tax guy,
curious
so.
on that. At the time, do you know what version it was when you were when that setup was going on? Was it still 6, or was it prior to 2019?
No, I'm thinking 2017, but something in my head's telling me that's not right.
But in Acumatica version, it was at least a few versions back from where we're at now.
Oh yes. And again, I was just cutting my teeth at that point when all of that was going down. Unfortunately, our training with the new VAR and the new interface and was basically a couple hours in a meeting where they said, "Here's how everything works." And have fun, and that was and they were a fledgling. I believe they were a fledgling company at that time as well. So I'm not trying to burn nobody here, by no means. They have some really hardworking people that do work. I'm not trying to burn nobody here, by no means. They have some really hardworking people that do work there. And one of them was my primary contact with them, and he was always more than helpful. I could call in and have a meeting with him, and we'd web meet. He'd show me on his screen, we're doing this, this is why we're doing this. That for me in my head, do this doesn't work. In my head, it's why did we do that? And why didn't we do that? And he was very good at that kind of explanation. I don't like to be shown how to do something. I want to know why it works. But anyhow, he one of the things that they did when they were bringing it over, like I said, it was kind of broken when they brought it in and transferred it. One of the import scenarios not right. And they ended up bringing in all of the products as restriction groups. So there's literally hundreds of restriction groups, and they're all products that obviously don't do anything. And you know how it is with the restriction groups, you can't exactly erase them once they're created. So to this day, there's still hundreds of restriction groups. Although I have tinkered many times now with a sandbox trying to use an export scenario to remove them to see if that would work. But I always break things, so I haven't tried it on live.
I think you're the only
many a sandbox.
I don't think you're the only ones with a bunch of unused restriction groups. I've heard that scenario a number of times. But it sounds like you dove into a bit of a mess, and I actually I like that story because I a lot of times on the consultant side we think of it as we just got to get you live, right, and move on to the next implementation. But I think the reality of it, in maybe most of the time even, is more your situation where getting live actually didn't mean that much. It's this ongoing process of getting it to work for the business. So maybe if we fast forward to, let's say, beginning of last year, beginning of 2020, what did things look like? Like, what were some of the things that you did that worked, and was the system starting to work well? Kind of where were you at that point in time?
Well, we still had a broken portal. I mean, the portal, it worked, but I want you to imagine the basic portal. and that when you go into the basic portal, I want you to imagine the basic portal, and that when you go into the basic portal, your average customer goes in there and they're lost. They're not used to basically ordering in that fashion. They want to go to like a website. I always thought that our portal should have, like when you go to portal.acumatica.com, I mean, that's an Acumatica portal. Am I wrong, or is it just a really good website that fakes it? No, it's a portal, right?
Actually, that what you're talking about there is actually a WordPress site with embedded Acumatica pages inside of it, and that's why it's cleaner. I feel the same way as you, that the customer portal is not a place I would want to send a customer, because it's an Acumatica system. It's not if people do a full-blown e-commerce, BigCommerce or Magento or whatever, because you don't want a customer going into ERP screens, right?
Right, and so basically our portal at that point stayed just for our wholesale or white label customers. At that point, we could say you have access to just these products, and they could go in and do basic stuff, but we never drilled down into making it there. And maybe you can help me with this, Tim. Where is the documentation that says, here's how you customize your portal?
Oh, I don't know. I try to avoid the portal. I don't know that much about it.
So that's why we had our primary customers, all our e-commerce customers, they were going to, 10 different websites to order these products. And, each website was set up. One was set up for vape products. One was set up for skincare. One was set up for, wanted click, order, boom, bang. Next thing you know, it's being mailed out. Well, a lot of times we had it shipped out same day. And it worked flawlessly. Well, mostly flawlessly. There's always kinks when you're doing something of that sort, but most of the time the kinks came when we updated the websites, which I kind of got a funny story about that. It's not Acumatica quite related, but my first day on the job, Jeff says, I want you to go in, you're going to be updating all the plugins on all the websites. Now keep in mind, WordPress wasn't a thing 20 years ago. If it was just in its infancy. And I'm like, oh, okay. I go to the websites, I'm like, wow, there's like 15, 20 plugins here that are all not working. And the first thing I went was update. And then the next thing I know, nothing was coming in through the system. And I broke our connection because, oops. Hey, you don't know what you don't know until you find out you didn't know it. So that's how that was my crash course in how to update websites. At that point, I learned real quick about sandboxing them as well. So, but for the most part, like our sales or like our leads, when our leads came in from the websites, we had to get creative with import scenarios to bring in the CSV files. We had to have some customization done for our sales orders to carry over some of the information that we needed to bring from the websites. And then my biggest issue, I think, in doing all of that is the other thing that is unfortunately not documented very well. Although I guess Yuri has created a customization that helped kind of link. So when you're building I want you to think when you're building a generic inquiry and you're trying to tie together the information from the different parts of the database, it's not very clear cut as to this ties to this, this ties to this. And that gave me a lot of issue, but so did like creating a dashboard. Creating a dashboard is so basic. as long as you know exactly where in that extremely complicated tree, that page was found. And now it's, I mean, the new version sure makes that easy, doesn't it? The old version, though, made it really, really difficult to try to tie that together if you didn't know where that particular generic inquiry was tucked away.
Yeah, I hear you. It's definitely gotten better. And I think, though, you know, with Acumatica, even though things are much better now, there's always new territory, right? And there's always the need to have that get in there and figure it out attitude, right? It's never, in any ERP system, I don't think, unless it's one that's been kind of put out to pasture and hasn't changed in 10 years, it's never fully documented, right? You always have to have, and I think that's maybe why in this industry, that's most of the people. You don't have the trust fund babies. This isn't, that's most of the people. You don't have the trust fund babies. This isn't investment banking or I don't know, whatever it is on the finance side. You know, you have to be able to get in and just figure stuff out, right? It's not all sitting there for you to learn.
And there really isn't. There really is no training available. Well, now there kind of is with Dynexus. You can get training if you're going to go in and work with a VAR. But as far as like from an administration side, there really isn't much along the lines of training in that way unless your VAR provides it. But now, where should that fall? I mean, in your book, should that fall on Acumatica? Should that fall on, on the VAR themselves? Where should that fall as far as getting here for?
Did you ever get on? Did they ever get you on Acumatica University? Maybe you just never got on there.
No, I got on there.
How was that for you?
In fact, again, give me the books that I needed to figure a lot of the stuff out. But again, like when you get down to like portal customization and things like that, I never had access to, the laid out training that is there for like VARs working their way towards the badge or anything like that. That's not available for the general end user.
Oh, interesting. That should be the same thing. The university with those giant PDF files, as far as I know, it's still this way. That is the VAR training. I don't think there is any more than that. They might have like a couple extra courses, but I don't think it's any different than what you see as a customer. I think a lot of people assume that there's just more there, especially with that greater level of detail that you're talking about. But as far as I understand, as far as I understand it, as far as to my knowledge, you're just working through support cases to figure out those details of customization and things like that.
Well, that, and I think as an administrator on the end, you have the forum. You can get onto one of the user groups, and you can ask a question if you have it. But if you need an answer fairly quickly, and there's not somebody there to give it to you, where a VAR pretty much they have the ear at Acumatica. There's a degree of separation there. They can shoot an email to someone at Acumatica, have an answer right away, which I think is still part of that. As far as and I'm not pointing fault, and I'm definitely not making excuses for any of that. Because like I said, we managed to make everything successful and make it work. Looking forward to getting everything moved over to, we're still on 2019, which better hurry and get that done because we just got the email. It's getting end of life. So, and I believe that's in the works now. I'm unfortunately not part of that process now, but that moving over is kind of in the works right now, and hopefully when it's done, it is basically a scrub and start over. Don't bring over broken data, because then if you're starting with broken, you're chasing your tail the whole time. Every time something just doesn't work, and you get online, and I know you've seen me in the forums, and I've asked a question, and you're like, well, why don't you just do this? I'm like, because that don't work. There were things like I know you've seen me in the forums, and I've asked a question, and you're like, well, why don't you just do this? I'm like, because that don't work. There were things like our for some reason our emails did not, for the longest time, would not work for nothing. I reached out to the VAR. The VAR ended up reaching out to Acumatica, and they found some weird quirk in the system and managed to fix it. But that's where the training that anybody would get, if they did get training in, if there was a college class for Acumatica, they would get taught the basics. They would get, here's a book, follow the book, do what's in the book, kind of like you do when you go to the training at the convention. The only difference there is, now here's where the books failed me, I feel. When I was there for the administration class, and we're going through the book.
Like a summit where you did like the live training the few days
Yes.
after the summit? Is that what you're talking about? Okay.
Yep. And you're going through the book, and they're like, okay, now on this page, on this line, forget that. That don't work. Do this instead. Okay, wait a minute. If I'm doing this on my own, and I don't have the instructor there saying, this part doesn't work, that's why every time I do it exactly as it is in the book, it don't work. And they know that it don't work, but there's the connection. There needs to be, updates as far as like that goes, for the documentation.
Yep.
That says, hey, pay attention. This isn't right. This was a mistake. This was a misprint. Type this instead of this, / instead of / whatever. And that I think would really advance people when they're trying to learn how to do this, as far as the accuracy there. Other than that, Acumatica is a very, very powerful, finicky beast. There's no better way to put it. It just really is. There's so much that goes on there between we have the manufacturing module. We were looking into I think that's one of the things that he's looking at adding on this year is the CRM module, because then it'll tie into the new phone system. I implemented a new phone system beginning of last year, that it'll tie into any CRM, and I think CRM or no could probably be tied right into Acumatica with just some minor tweaks, but that basically when tied right into Acumatica with just some minor tweaks, but that basically when a call comes in, it pops up, tells you who they are, and brings up their screen for that customer, and it's phenomenal. There just hasn't been an integration written yet for that phone system. Once there is,
What's the phone system that you did? I'm curious.
3CX.
3CX. Okay, interesting.
Oh, it is absolutely phenomenally easy to administrate. Keep in mind, again, it was, everybody's got to work from home, and we had a phone system that required everybody to be at the office plugged into a desk phone, and with a quickness, I had to figure out how this whole extremely complicated phone tree, I called it a phone forest because it was. We had that Jeff founded there was that if a customer called, somebody answered. We didn't say, leave us a message and we'll call you back, unless it's after hours, and at that point, sorry. But if you're calling during business hours, somebody should be able to answer the phone. And so if the CSRs were all busy, then it would fall over to the wholesale queue. And if the wholesale people were busy as well, then it would fall over into management. And so there was always a failover, so that within 1 minute, it was ringing at that point everybody's phone in the company. So somebody was going to pick up, somebody was going to answer. We had to figure out how to do that from home. and 3CX provided that as a sound, phenomenal solution. But the integration for the CRM, that's the next step that takes it, that's going to put it over the top as far as
I would call the manufacturing edition, which makes sense for CBD. And what other things did you wind up doing from a customization standpoint or from a third-party standpoint? You mentioned earlier several different websites. I'd be curious to hear more about that. But maybe before we hit those websites, just what other general customizations or third parties did you wind up using?
Well, we did have to have a customization done for the website integration for our sales orders, and then we had some customizations done for a third-party processor that wasn't available previously, and then like I said, we had to save the sale, but we never needed that.
Like a 3PL shipping processor?
No, we did have a shipping customization on there. We didn't need that here starting beginning of last year. No, as far as a payment processor. The problem,
gotcha.
Again, with CBD is there were so many, and there still is. People automatically hear CBD and they think you sell pot, and they're wrong. It's not. But even the banks, for the longest time, we had no choice but to have all of our payments processed in Great Britain because nobody here would touch a CBD company. So there was no direct correlation there. We had to have an integration built to tie our payment processor, our credit card processor, directly into Acumatica. So that's where that customization came in. All totaled, I believe there was like 9 different customizations on Acumatica when all was said and done. When I
wound up using any ISV product?
Oh, well, I don't know. What'd you have in mind, Tim? The only other third-party product I was thinking of is like
something you would have paid a subscription on, right? Or some other piece of software that was already built that you didn't build yourself.
Okay, yeah. So like the Adobe Sign integration.
Perfect.
Yep. And that, imagine you make a quote and you send a quote, or even right down to wholesale agreements, down to their yearly. Oh goodness, what do we call it? Oh my goodness, their payment. Oh my goodness, their payment processing for like direct withdrawal from their banks. We had to do that payment request. We did that yearly, and it has to expire. When it expires, we need to know about it, and then we got to be able to send another one. And Adobe Sign makes all of that much easier. So that's a phenomenal addition. Other than that, third-party wise, I don't think we had much that was actually a third-party integration. Most of it was custom built. Which makes sense.
For CBD industry, like you're saying, just so much changes in the last few years. A lot of the stuff is bootstrapped, build it yourself because of all the uniqueness to it and the legal requirement side of it. So then on the website side, that sounded interesting. First, I'm curious. You said there were several different websites. If you were to go back and do several different websites, if you were to go back and do it again, does that make sense from a branding standpoint, or was that a headache to have so many different websites?
I think it does make sense. And now the funny thing is that last conference when I was in training, I was asking them questions about a couple of different issues that we were having, and he's sitting there telling me, what do you mean you have 10 websites feeding into your, you can't have 10 websites. No, we have 10 websites. No, you mean you have 10 products. No, we have 10 websites, and then we have drop shippers. Well, you can't do that. You're dealing with something. No, I'm telling you, we're doing it. They were blown away. couldn't believe that we had done this, and that's when it clicked in my head. This customization that we've created is very special. That can do that, because we're doing something right. And that might be something that we were at one point looking at possibly, and we are probably going to head that way in the near future. We talked to a plugin developer that said they can create us a plugin for any website, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, AliExpress, Amazon, eBay, any of them, so that they will all tie in and all seamlessly feed in exactly the same way into our ERP as if they were ordering off a website. And when we get the plugin developed and the way it ties in through our system, I think that's a customization that other people might be interested in, especially if they're into drop shipping. Other people might be interested in, especially if they're into drop shipping.
When you say customization, you mean like a customization project in Acumatica, or something that maybe is more middleware that kind of sits out and talks to two systems with APIs?
Yes, there is there is an API that runs between the two that makes a translator of sorts. But on the back end of Acumatica, there was also a small customization that allowed for some additional webhooks.
Gotcha.
So, but that the key there is the $100,000 plus that was developed, that was used to develop that API. Over the years, every time we found any little glitch or flaw, programmers ain't cheap. Coders ain't cheap. I didn't write it, but I know enough about it to be dangerous. But I do know that the way it's set up, we could literally, through that one API, direct and redirect thousands of web orders at a time from different directions, and then point them out to different ERPs. So at that point, our API becomes like a backbone connector that translates all this information. And once we get the plugin finished, and all you have to do, because right now we have to do a customization on the website to make it talk to the API. Then we have to do then the API does its magic and then sends it out, has a small customization that allows that incoming communication. So between those moving parts, a customization is real easy to duplicate, but it isn't on a website. When it's different for every platform. When you go in for WooCommerce, we know how it works with WooCommerce. You need this change, this change, this change, and don't update this plugin because it all breaks. But once we get a plugin developed that replaces that customization, this becomes something that anyone can use. And
when you say plugin, you mean a WordPress plugin for a WordPress
WordPress
website.
Or for WordPress or any. It doesn't even have to be just WordPress though. Like I said, we can
Gotcha.
push in from anywhere. It doesn't even have to be just WordPress though. Like I said, we can
Gotcha.
push in from anywhere at that point. And if you can bring in orders again, AliExpress, Amazon, eBay, BigCommerce, WooCommerce. I don't know what all's out there. I know there's lots of shopping carts out there that don't connect to Acumatica. And now I know there's a company out there right now that kind of has a service, but it's nowhere near on the scope of what we're doing. But we reached out to them at one point, and it didn't do everything that we are already doing, so it didn't make sense to us. For smaller companies, their service is perfect and it's affordable. I'm talking about AccuWoo. You've heard of them, right? That ties WooCommerce to Acumatica.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But when you're dealing with this many websites, when we talked to them, they were in the same kind of thought. How are you doing it?
You got Kenzium's connectors to BigCommerce and Magento, but you were running WooCommerce, so that wasn't going to work for you. Right, but now we want to make everything work. I mean, I don't care what website. If a customer on the other end, you have a drop shipper, they have a website built out, and it's built out with, WooCommerce. It's built out with any shopping cart program or platform that isn't WooCommerce. Well, unless you want to have how many different integration customizations on the back end of Acumatica to tie them all together, this will make one integration. It just makes it simple. What about the drop shipment side? So you even mentioned connecting to multiple ERPs. Are you actually pushing orders in or looking to push orders into other suppliers on the back end? So at the moment, like I said, that's a capability through our API that can be done as far as out to other ERPs. So like, let's say Tim Rodman is selling Rodman widget A on his website, and he wants it to automatically tie into his ERP. And you have 20 drop shippers that want to sell Rodman widget A through D, and you need all of that. 20 drop shippers that want to sell Rodman widget A through D, and you need all of that. When it comes in, you need to be able to figure out this is coming from website A, website B, website C, website D. Then you need all of the tracking and all that information to come with it. And then when it's all done, here's the kicker. You have to send back the information that says it's been shipped. Here's the tracking number. Here's all, and we have that working with WooCommerce, and we're working on the plugin to make it all work with everything else. So at that point, like I said, I can say, hey, Tim, take this plugin and put it on your website, and then use this key, this key, this key, and this key, and enter them in. And then that tells it, my website is this. It's going to, off to ERP this. At that point, we can point it anywhere. We could have 20, 30 websites tied to your ERP, 30 more tied to somebody else's ERP. It really helps if you hit the unmute button. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that would help you build out like more of a sales channel, that you could have your products listed on not just websites that you own, but websites that other people own, and then maybe they get a commission off of the sale, something like that. Some of that sort, yeah. What I'm thinking of, think of the impact that COVID has had on how we do business today, on how retailers do business today. Look how many things have gone digital. Every order something, you're better off to go online and order it than you are to go to a store and try. Most of the time you can't even get in. If you live anywhere like, lockdowns are pretty bad in California too, ain't they? Yeah. Yeah, this is too. So what I'm looking at here is in the long run, business is different. It's going to be different. It's going to stay different. We're already accustomed to some of this is going to stay the way it is right now. This is my prediction, okay? We're not going to go into 2022 after COVID's done, got his butt whooped and whatever, and all right, everybody, no, it's not going to work. Not when Burger King can now deliver to my house, Right. There's
aspects to it that are always going to be there. But if you can't sell your product except in a store or except to your wholesalers, even if you're just looking at, say, 300 orders a day, if you have to enter those orders by hand for different drop shippers and then send all that tracking information back out so that they can upload it to their, look at the man hours that go into it, and we're literally processing it instantly. It's really is genius the way it's designed. And I wish I could claim I designed it, but I can't. But I do know enough about it that I've helped tailor some of these ideas on how to make this better. And I think that going forward, I want to see come Acumatica 2022. I want this to be on the stage. I want everybody going, look what this is doing, and I think that it's. I want everybody going, look what this is doing, and I think that it's yet another thing that'll help accelerate Acumatica, and at the same time, hey, we might make a little money on it. That wouldn't be bad either. So, luckily, because I've had a good relationship with Jeff, and because my separation from MHR is on amicable terms, and he's got a lot on his plate already. We already have an understanding that if I develop this out, that he's good with it. We'll come up with a compensation for both of us and what have you, because he is the one that funded the $100,000 plus that went into developing this API, this custom program, and he's not going to be willing to, I don't think, to just go give it away to anyone. But at the same time, I don't know. I'd have to do some market research and find out where the pricing would come in. But I think that the plugin on one end, the plugin developer would probably give the plugin away without a problem, as long as they got a percentage of our profit from their plugin. So if they push orders through, and it comes back, if they get 1% of whatever goes through it, or 0.5%, or whatever the market research bears out, right? And it goes through our web or through our API, and even if, I don't know, maybe we charge a subscription for the API. Hey, if you have any ideas, you can let me know. If you come up with any ideas, I'm not greedy. I don't want, it's going to cost you $10,000 a month. I'm not trying for nothing stupid, crazy. I want this to be something that everyone embraces, and by making it affordable, that's possible. If you make it way out of reach, nobody's going to want anything to do with it. So that's kind of
sounds like cool stuff. And it sounds to me like what you're really diving into there is not just an integration between the front end customer side and the ERP system, but you're really drilling down into the whole supply chain and how that actually gets delivered out, not just from a warehouse out, but being that seed to sale mentality that a CBD company has. You're drilling down further, even to the manufacturing, and at least in terms of your awareness when you're designing that type of solution.
Yeah, to a point.
Manufacturing, and at least in terms of your awareness when you're designing that type of solution.
Yeah, to a point. That's pretty much what it is. It's. Again, I just think that this is something that's going to make Acumatica much more robust in the future. The Acumatica just seems to be growing leaps and bounds, and it's got some limitations. And the more of those limitations that we can overcome that other ERPs maybe necessarily can't overcome, the better off we all are in the long run that are into Acumatica now before it's mainstream. and it's getting mainstream pretty quickly, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. They seem to be growing very fast, and the future still looks bright. COVID, the damper on the whole economy, but a cloud ERP solution like Acumatica looks to do well in a post-COVID world. So yeah, it's been exciting times to be involved with the product. What about you personally? You mentioned there that maybe you're not at MHR anymore, but what are you looking to do moving forward? You like this ERP stuff, or where are things at with you?
Yeah, I really do. The reason I mentioned Dynexus, I did reach out to Julian because again that a lot of that training that I'm the kind of person that when I'm not working, I would rather go through and have every single batch just so I can have every single batch, right? And speaking with Julian, he said he wanted to kind of point out to me that my field of experience, there's a couple of jobs in particular where they need someone who has these different categories of experience and Acumatica experience. And because again, it's not something that not everybody knows. That going into a VAR, there's a lot of things there as far as like a consultant, and I'm sure you experience this, but you really have to know a lot of the financial stuff that, guess what? Not all geeks know, about balanced records and open and closed and AR and AP, and I'm no accountant by no means. So you know what? I can see that. I can understand that connection there. I would absolutely love to get into another position where I'm working with Acumatica, and even if it's in another IT management role, I'd with Acumatica, and even if it's in another IT management role, I'd still be there with MHR had it not been downsized so terribly by the lockdowns killing off customers. They're at a point now where they're going to build back up, and they will. They'll build back up bigger, better, and stronger than before. But in the meantime, there's no footprint there anymore for a dedicated IT manager. So we separated on amicable terms there. Then I've known Jeff for a long time. He's a very outgoing, caring person. Doesn't cut people just because. But going forward, I found a couple of opportunities where they need somebody who knows my experience with tile. I actually worked with some of the products this company produces. They want to know about warehousing. They want to know about logistics. They want to know about people with Acumatica skills. And I check all their boxes, and guess what? It's south, but not tarantula south.
Well, that sounds great. I mean, I'd love to see you staying in the Acumatica area. I like your description of your background and your role being like IT manager side. I found with myself actually, I got into ERP consulting. I then went in-house for a little while. I came back into consulting. Now this year I'm off on my own, focused on the Acumatica reporting. I dive into so much more depth even than the consultants do, in my opinion, on the business side. A VAR consultant, their mentality is it's a lot of project management. It's a lot of get you live and then support you, but you're not in the day-to-day in the business. And it's not like consultants are smart and in-house are not smart, which is the way I thought before I went in-house, to admit there. But it's a different skill set, and someone who dives in and tackles problems a lot of times is a better fit for an in-house role. I mean, if you could leverage that Acumatica knowledge on top of that, that'd be awesome to see you land somewhere that allows you to still do the breadth of IT that you can do, but also be able to go into the depth of Acumatica more. That'd be awesome. I'm rooting for you.
Yeah, if Acumatica is working, properly, and there's nothing wrong, and no user put the wrong what's it in the wrong spot, and whatever is working, properly, and there's nothing wrong, and no user put the wrong what's it in the wrong spot, and whatever. If there's not an issue, then there is no need for an administrator. But unfortunately, I think from a consultant point, when a consultant sets it up, they go in and they think, okay, this is pretty much how we did it before. This, and this. This might be different. This might be different. But every business is so different that they necessarily don't have the time to nail down and drill into every one of those little inconsistencies, every one of those little special reports they need, every custom dashboard they need. They don't have time to set all that up, figure all that out, and that's where that you got to be able to nail down those aspects of the install. From an administration side, I think that's what that is. It's like just like any training. You go to school, they train you, okay, look, here's how a database works. Here's the book, it says this. Okay, look, here's how a database works. Here's the book, it says this, and this. You can do this, and this, and this. But then in the real world, when X happens and X wasn't covered on the test, it's me who's been there and figured it out because I didn't follow the test. I had to break a few sandboxes to figure out that X isn't supposed to be there. So that's my line of thinking. I mean, yeah, I don't have that formal training that a lot of people have, but at the same time, I have such a passion for IT in general that I've loved diving into this and learning everything that I can. I'm by far not an Acumatica expert. In fact, I know that a lot of my posts that I put on the forum, I know you've looked at them and went, come on, dude, because you answer so quickly and you have the person, but that's a learning experience. Every time I post on there, that's my chance to learn something I didn't know before. And that's how I go about everything. If you don't know what you don't know until you know you didn't know it, right?
I love that. I'm exactly the same way. I'm not an Acumatica expert either. The day I become an Acumatica expert is the day I stop learning.
That's the day they'll change it, and you'll have to learn some more. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a moving target, and just that desire to learn, that willingness to dive in, that not being afraid to say when you don't know. A lot of people can't do that. But just not being able to not being afraid to reach out for, another perspective, that's a unique skill set, I think, and a valuable skill set, especially in what you describe as an ERP administration type position, which I personally think is as an ERP administration type position, which I personally think is very needed. You can't have a consultant fill that role, in my opinion. They can advise on setup and things like that. There's a need for their role as well. But that day-to-day administration of an ERP system, you can't just trust the software to run itself. You need a person who's in charge, because who's putting data into it? It's people. And people always have messes. I mean, no matter how much you know how to clean your room, there's still always effort involved to keep the room clean, right? And oversight to keep the room clean. The same thing with a system. You need oversight, you need administration to keep people in line. Sometimes you're a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes you're a stick looking to beat someone down for something. It's a person-to-person interaction that keeps an ERP system clean. Otherwise, you wind up in the same spot you were at with your old system. You have better technology, but if you don't have a housekeeper, an administrator, whatever you want to call it, it's going to become a mess again. And I think it's a necessary role, maybe not a full-time role, and that's why that breadth of IT knowledge is important, because you have to be able to do other things to fill your day. But it's definitely an important role to making Acumatica a success in our organization. At least I feel that way.
Yeah, you got to have a really, really faulty or really faulty system or really bad data going into a system to need to be a full-time Acumatica administrator for one company.
Or just a big company, right? The company I was at in Cleveland was like a few $100 million a year, and it was just big enough to be full-time on it. But yeah, for most Acumatica customers, it's not a full-time job. Agreed.
But that's where it come in handy having all the other, it's powerful that, you can tie a phone system into it. You can tie your Office 365 into it. You can tie, tie your websites into it. You can tie everything into this one monster product that just handles it all. But even then, sometimes the data comes in faulty there too. If somebody orders from a country that the country code doesn't match from the website to what's in Acumatica now. Oh, that's another customization.
Yeah.
Go and tweak something. Just little things like that happen, and you have to be able to spot it. You have to know when it happens and figure out how to fix it when it does happen. And when you can't fix it, you have to know where Tim is so that you can say, hey, Tim, what's going on here?
Well, hey, Jody, I got to run here. Thanks for coming on and telling your story, telling the Acumatica implementation story.
Thank you, Tim. You have a great time, and hey, enjoy that sunshine. Soak it up while you can.
Yeah, escaping Ohio right now in San Diego and soaking it up.
Yeah, I'll be
Thanks
shoveling
again.
tomorrow. Bye.
All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of AUG